This is a book review and mental health of the book. The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. Authored by Jonathan Haidt.
Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be talking about something that I think is on a lot of people's minds these days, and that's the mental health of young people.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a topic that's constantly in the news and in conversations, and, everyone's kind of trying to figure out what's going on.
It really is.
So for this deep dive, our main guy, I guess you could say, is Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation.
Okay.
And he's a pretty prominent social psychologist, and his work has really explored morality and culture, which I think lends a lot of weight to what he has to say about this particular topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess to kick things off, what's the big question that Haidt is trying to answer in this book?
Well, he's really trying to grapple with this question of why rates of anxiety and depression and even self-harm among young people, especially since the early 2010s, have been rising so sharply.
Yeah, and he presents some pretty startling statistics, right?
He does.
Like, in some cases, we're talking more than double the rates of these issues. And it's not just, limited to the U.S. or anything.
No, not at all.
It's a global trend.
It is, yeah. It's happening all over the world.
Which is really alarming.
It is, yeah. It makes you wonder what's at the root of all this.
So how does Haidt start to explain this? Where does he begin?
Well, he talks about this idea of great rewiring of childhood is how he phrases it.
Okay.
And he essentially argues that we've gone through this major shift from childhoods that were really centered around, like free play outdoors. Like think back to when we were kids. We were always outside running around.
Yeah, exactly.
To childhoods that are much more structured and dominated by phones and screens.
So it's like a shift from what? Play-based to phone-based.
Exactly, yeah. Play-based to phone-based childhoods. And he says this has had a huge impact on the way that kids' brains develop and the way they learn to socialize and interact with the world.
That's such an interesting way to put it, this rewiring.
It makes me think, even looking back to the 80s, there's a noticeable difference.
Oh, absolutely.
In how kids spent their time then compared to now.
Huge difference.
It's almost like there's been this gradual but really dramatic shift away from unstructured outdoor play to more structured, often indoor activities.
Right.
And technology has obviously played a huge role in that.
Yeah, for sure. And Haidt really zeroes in on smartphones as a major, major factor.
Oh, interesting.
He says they've fundamentally changed the way we interact with the world, especially for kids, You have this constant connection, this instant gratification, this carefully curated online reality.
Right.
And it's incredibly alluring and even addictive.
Yeah.
But he argues that it comes at a cost.
So what is that cost, according to Haidt? I mean, it makes you wonder, has this constant presence of smartphones, has that diminished our face-to-face interactions? Are we becoming more isolated because of them?
Yeah.
And is there more pressure now to present this perfect filtered version of ourselves online? Oh, absolutely. Especially for like teenagers who are already going through so much,
Right.
Trying to figure out who they are, where they fit in.
Yeah.
Social media just kind of like throws gasoline on that fire,
Yeah.
Makes everything so much more intense.
Right. So social media, it's this platform that's, supposed to connect us all.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the reality is a lot more complicated than that.
It really is.
Yeah.
Haidt actually calls it a paradox.
Okay.
He's saying that this thing that's designed for connection can actually lead to greater loneliness and feelings of inadequacy.
Interesting.
Because it becomes this breeding ground for negative social comparisons, for cyberbullying, for unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, it's like this constant barrage of, perfect bodies and perfect lives.
Yeah, it never stops, right?
And it's hard to imagine, how anyone, especially a teenager, can avoid feeling anxious or depressed when they're constantly being bombarded with that.
It really is.
Yeah.
And our brains are just wired to compare ourselves to others.
Right.
And social media just, like I said, it throws gasoline on that fire. And the research shows that there's a pretty strong correlation between heavy social media use and an increase in these mental health issues, especially for teenage girls.
That's really unsettling.
It is.
Teenage girls are already dealing with so much at that age.
Exactly. Yeah. And Haidt actually spent some time talking about this gender difference,
Down with the audiobook of The Anxious Generation, and I think it is one of the most impactful books I have read all year. I tell every single parent they need to read this book, whether you listen to it, read it, however you get your hands on a copy. It is that important.
If you have children or maybe you have young people in your life that you really care about, I think this is a really good book to read. One, I think it shows you that you're not living in a vacuum. Like a lot of the issues that you are experiencing, they're not anecdotal. They're trends that exist throughout the country, throughout the world, and people share in your concerns about how technology is affecting and influencing the young people of the world.
Okay.
He observes that girls seem to be a lot more susceptible to the negative effects of social media.
Interesting.
He suggests that it might be because they tend to be more sensitive to social feedback and they're more likely to experience, online harassment and things like that.
It's a tough world for young people to navigate these days.
It really is.
And it's not just what's happening online, right?
Right.
Haidt also argues that parenting styles have played a role in this whole anxious generation phenomenon.
He does, yeah.
And he suggests that this trend toward more supervised, more risk-averse parenting, while it's totally well-intentioned, it might actually be creating a generation that's less equipped to handle life's inevitable challenges.
He uses this great phrase, overprotective parenting.
I like that.
And he argues that by shielding kids from every bump in the road, we might actually be limiting their ability to develop independence and coping mechanisms,
So it's like this paradox again. We want to create this safe and predictable environment for our kids.
Of course.
Which makes total sense, but doing so, we might actually be making them more vulnerable in the long run.
Yeah, and that's where, that allure of digital devices comes in.
Right.
Because they offer this, instant gratification and this world that feels really carefully controlled.
Right.
Which can be really appealing to kids who haven't had the chance to, experience real-world challenges and build resilience through those experiences.
Yeah, it's fascinating how all these pieces kind of fit together.
Yeah, it is.
And Haidt goes even deeper, right? He digs into the actual psychological mechanisms at play. He talks about how this constant bombardment of stimuli, what he calls attention fragmentation, can make it harder for kids to focus and concentrate.
Yeah, and he also talks about, the impact of sleep disruption, which is so crucial for well-being.
Right.
And of course, he emphasizes the addictive nature of social media, how these platforms are specifically designed to keep us hooked.
Right. So it's like this perfect storm.
It really is.
You've got these developmental changes happening in childhood. You've got the rise of these incredibly addictive technologies. And then you've got these well-intentioned but potentially counterproductive parenting styles.
Right.
Yeah, it paints a pretty bleak picture.
It can, yeah.
But I know Haidt doesn't just leave us there, right? He actually offers some potential solutions.
He does, yeah. He does. He doesn't just leave us with a doom and gloom diagnosis.
Okay, good.
He actually has some, some ideas about what we can do about all of this.
So tell me, what are some of those solutions? What does he propose?
Well, he advocates for a multifaceted approach, right? It involves delaying the introduction of smartphones, encouraging more unstructured play, and implementing educational reforms that prioritize social-emotional learning.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit.
Sure.
First, he suggests delaying smartphones, like holding off until high school.
It is a pretty radical idea.
It is. In today's world, that's a huge ask.
Yeah, it is.
But, his point is to give kids more time to develop, like you were saying.
Right, exactly. To develop socially and emotionally without those constant distractions.
Without that digital world always pulling at them.
Exactly.
I mean, what do you think about that? Is that even realistic?
I mean, it's a provocative idea, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It sparked a lot of debate.
Right.
The reality is, most kids are getting smartphones way earlier than high school.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's this pressure, right, from both peers and parents to keep up with the latest technology.
To not fall behind.
Exactly.
What are some of the arguments against delaying smartphones?
Well, some people would say that, smartphones can be valuable tools for learning and for communication.
Right.
Kids can stay connected with their friends and family.
Yeah.
They can access educational resources.
Right.
And they can even, develop these important digital literacy skills that are kind of essential in today's world.
Right. Like you need to know how to use these things.
You do. Yeah.
And there's also, the safety aspect. Parents want to be able to reach their kids, know where they are.
Right. Make sure they can call for help if they need to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there are definitely arguments on both sides.
It sounds like it really comes down to finding that balance, doesn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Like, how do we harness the benefits of technology without letting it take over our lives or the lives of our children?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
And it's not just about smartphones either.
Right.
It's about technology in general. Like, how do we create a world where technology enhances our lives rather than dominates them? How do we teach kids to use technology wisely and responsibly?
It's something we all need to be thinking about for sure.
We do, yeah. And I think Haidt's book gives us a really valuable starting point for those conversations.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it is.
And we're just getting started.
We are.
But, maybe we can take a little pause here,
Okay.
catch our breath.
Sounds good.
And when we come back, we'll dive into some of those other solutions that Haidt proposes.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Awesome. We'll be right back after a short break.
Great.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dig into those other solutions that Haidt lays out in his book. Before the break, we were talking about delaying smartphones, but it sounds like he's got a whole plan to try to reclaim childhood a little bit.
Yeah, he really wants to shift the focus back to that idea of play-based childhoods that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
He's really passionate about bringing that back. He's like, kids need more opportunities for that unstructured play. Where they can just run around, get messy, use their imaginations, figure things out for themselves.
I love that. I mean, it does feel like we've gotten so caught up in structured activities, organized sports, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That we've maybe forgotten the value of just letting kids be kids.
Right.
And explore the world on their own terms. It's almost like we're scared to let them make mistakes.
Yeah. And Haidt argues that those mistakes, those little failures, are actually crucial learning experiences.
Right.
They help kids develop resilience, problem-solving skills, social intelligence, all that good stuff.
Makes you think of that old saying, children learn by doing.
Yeah,
We can try to teach them all sorts of things, but ultimately they learn best through their own experiences.
Even the messy ones, the ones we try to protect them from.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So how does unstructured play fit into all of this?
Well, it allows kids to experiment, take risks, and learn from their mistakes, but in a safe and supportive environment.
Okay, yeah.
Think about it, when kids are just left to their own devices, no pun intended.
Right.
They have to negotiate, collaborate. Sometimes they even fail.
Right.
And those are all valuable experiences that you just can't replicate in a structured adult supervised setting.
Right. They're getting this mini crash course in how to navigate the real world.
Exactly.
So dealing with conflict, working together, bouncing back from setbacks.
All of that.
Okay, I'm with you. So it's not just about what happens at home or in the park, right?
Right.
Haidt thinks schools should play a role in this as well.
He does. He believes that schools really need to prioritize social emotional learning.
Okay.
Helping kids develop the skills they need to manage their emotions, build healthy relationships, cope with stress.
It makes sense. I mean, it does feel like we put so much emphasis on academics sometimes, that those social emotional skills kind of get lost in the shuffle.
Absolutely. It's like we're setting kids up for success in one area of life,
Right.
but kind of neglecting these other areas that are just as important, if not more so.
Yeah, for sure.
Evolution optimized the structure of every creature over eons for the gravitational force on our particular planet. From birth onward, each creature's bones, joints, muscles, and cardiovascular system develop in response to the unchanging one-way pull of gravity. Removing this constant pull profoundly affects our bodies. The muscles of adult astronauts who spend months in the weightlessness of space become weaker, and their bones become less dense. Their body fluids collect in places where they shouldn't, such as the brain cavity, which puts pressure on the eyeballs and changes their shape. Mars has gravity, but it's only 38% of what a child would experience on Earth. Children raised in the low-gravity environment of Mars would be at high risk of developing deformities in their skeletons, hearts, eyes, and brains. Did the planners take this vulnerability of children into account?
So it's about finding that balance again.
It is.
Like, academics are important, but we also need to be teaching kids how to be, well-rounded human beings.
Exactly. And Haidt really believes that social-emotional learning should be just as important as reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's about recognizing that success in life is about so much more than just grades or test scores.
Right, right.
It's about being able to navigate relationships, manage your emotions, find a sense of purpose and belonging, all of that.
It's really inspiring that Haidt doesn't just point out the problems and then walk away.
Right.
He actually offers this vision of, like, how we can make things better.
He does.
And he's calling for this collective action, right? Like, it's not just on parents or educators, it's on all of us.
It is, yeah. It's on policymakers, even on tech companies.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play in creating a healthier environment for young people.
When we first started talking about all this, it felt kind of overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely.
But hearing Haidt talk about solutions, it actually makes it feel a lot less daunting.
Yeah, I think so too. It's easy to get bogged down in all the negativity.
Right.
But Haidt reminds us that we have agency. We can make choices that shape the future, both for ourselves and for the next generation.
I love that. We might not be able to single-handedly change the world, but we can definitely make a difference in our own little corners of it.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about the anxious generation.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just being a diagnosis of the problem. It becomes this springboard for a broader conversation about how we approach technology, childhood development, mental health, all of that as a society.
So how has Haidt's work been received? I'm curious.
It sparked a lot of discussion.
I bet.
And debate,
Right.
especially among parents, of course.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's coming at this from a pretty unique perspective, right?
He is, yeah. He's known for his work on morality.
Mm-hmm.
So he brings that lens to this issue.
Okay.
It's like he's asking, what does the rise of these really powerful technologies mean for our moral development,
Wow.
for our understanding of right and wrong?
That's really interesting.
It's almost like he's saying, hey, we've created this incredibly powerful technology, but have we stopped to think about the ethical implications, especially for kids?
Right, right. We're so quick to embrace the latest gadget or app or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We don't always stop to think about the long-term consequences.
It's true. We don't. It's like we're in this race to innovate, to push the boundaries of what's possible. But sometimes we forget to ask, is this actually good for us?
Right. Yeah.
Is it good for our kids? Is it good for society as a whole?
We're so focused on the what, like what we can create, what new features we can develop, what new gadgets we can put in kids' hands. But we forget to ask why and how.
Absolutely. And those are the questions we need to be asking, like way more forcefully.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not about like demonizing technology altogether.
No, not at all.
It's about approaching it with more like awareness, more intentionality, more responsibility, especially when it comes to kids.
Exactly. We need to be much more thoughtful about how and when we introduce technology into their lives.
It's like that analogy you were using before, We wouldn't just hand a toddler a sharp knife
Right.
and let them run wild,
Exactly.
We would teach them how to use it safely, supervise them carefully,
Right.
set clear boundaries.
Totally.
And I think we need to approach technology with that same level of caution and care, especially for young people whose brains are still developing.
That's such a good analogy. It really drives the point home.
And it's not even just about like setting boundaries, teaching kids how to use technology responsibly. And it's also about recognizing that technology isn't a substitute for real world experiences.
It's not. It's not. Kids need opportunities to play outside.
Yes.
To interact with other people face to face, to experience the world through their senses, not just through a screen.
Right, right.
All of those things are crucial for healthy development, and no app or gadget can truly replace that.
It's not even just about childhood development. I mean, think about the impact technology is having on our attention spans.
Absolutely.
Our relationships, our sleep patterns, our sense of self even.
It's a lot. These are things we all need to be paying attention to, not just for the sake of our kids, but for our own well-being too.
It is a bit of a wake-up call, isn't it?
It is.
It's like we need to be more mindful of our own technology habits.
For sure.
And model healthy behaviors for the next generation.
Yeah, and it's a call to action, right? We need to demand more from our tech companies.
Yep.
Push for more ethical design, advocate for policies that protect children and promote digital well-being.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just sit back and passively consume whatever technology throws at us.
We have a voice, and we need to use it.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good place to leave it for today.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's been a fascinating, challenging conversation.
It has.
But ultimately, I think Haidt gives us a lot to think about and a lot of hope for the future.
He does. He does. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
Right.
Take what you've learned, share it with others, keep those conversations going.
Love that. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And until next time, happy diving.
We encourage you as well to check out this book, leave a comment and tell us what you think about this book. Make sure to stay tuned on our channel for our next mental health book review about this book. The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. This remarkable book takes us on a journey through the complex relationship between the brain, mind, and body when it comes to healing from trauma. Dr. van der Kolk combines science, stories, and practical strategies to help us better understand how to overcome life's most challenging experiences. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss this or any of our upcoming reviews. See you soon on Mental Pages. Let's turn the page to better mental health.